Let's travel back in time to 1993. I'm 11 years old, decked out in all the trimmings of a 90s kid. A high-side ponytail with big bangs, neon bicycle shorts, an oversized t-shirt with a ring to tie it up on one side, like all the cool kids, and an overly glossed lip smacker pout. My family had finished dinner the hour prior and everyone was engaging in their evening activities. My dad watching ESPN in the family room, my brother listening to CDs in his bedroom, my mom reading her Better Homes and Gardens while sipping on a Crystal Pepsi in the kitchen, and me on a landline phone where everyone could hear the conversation I was having with my best friend, Jenny. After an hour of chatting, I placed the phone back on the wall-mounted receiver. This is what we call hanging up for my Gen Zers and Alphas in the audience. And I was feeling really awesome about the time I spent with Jenny. Then something interesting happened. Without looking up from her magazine, my mom calmly said, "You're grounded, 2 weeks, starting tonight." I was in shock. Not only did I have zero clue what had transpired to warrant such a punishment, this was my first grounding, ever. I racked my brain. Did I swear? Did I gossip? Did I tell Jenny a secret I wasn't supposed to tell her? What did I do? When I came up short, I turned to my mom, tears welling in my eyes, and asked, "Why am I grounded? I'm so confused." She responded, "Phone with your best friend for an hour, and during that time you talked about your day at school, your piano lesson, your dance class, what you ate for dinner, and what you're gonna have for a bedtime snack. Not only did you not pause for a second to let Jenny chime in, you didn't ask her a single question about her day. And that's simply not how we treat people in this house, so you're grounded, 2 weeks." I was beside myself. Not only was this feedback counter to my self-image as a kind and thoughtful preteen, but I had let my mom down. This was also my first experience with the famed parental expression delivered to many an elder millennial, "I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed." It's been more than 3 decades since that night, and I have focused my attention on listening every day since. At 30, I went back to school to earn a master's degree in counseling, AKA a master's degree in listening, and I'm now an expert in the practice. Now I listen for a living, not to avoid the emotions that I felt that night, but to honor my mom by ensuring every human I interact with knows what it's like to feel seen, heard, and understood. Diane Goodman O'Malley, my mom, passed away a little more than a year after holding me accountable for my behavior. And when I think back to try to hear her voice, more often than not, I come up short. For a long while, I thought this was due to the passage of time. But the truth is, it's because she was almost always listening and not speaking. And Diane is the reason I'm on the stage with you tonight. I love you, Mom. Thank you. I promise to get back to listening momentarily. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room, which is, this is a TEDx talk, not a TEDx listening, but I assure you I spend the majority of my day engaging in the behaviors and practices that I will be sharing with you from the red dot for 13 more minutes. During those 13 minutes, you will hear me say another 1,625 words, or 125 words every minute. Of those 1,625 words, you will likely remember half of them for the next 8 hours, with your attention declining exponentially after that time period. One of my goals in delivering this talk is to equip you with a new set of listening skills in real time. So if I'm lucky, when you wake up tomorrow morning, you will remember and understand more than 50% of what I've shared with you tonight. Dreaming big here, I know. So what's with the numbers? A person speaks, on average, 125 words per minute, but our brains and neural pathways are capable of processing so much more information than the crawling pace at which we communicate. Think of it this way. Your brain is an F1 race car with an incredibly talented human behind the wheel, ready to zip around the course at 300 miles an hour. And pulling up to compete alongside this race car, a bicycle, captained by a first-time rider without training wheels. It's a completely unbalanced equation. When I first read these stats, I immediately thought, with all this information processing power, listening should be easy. Shouldn't we all be able to understand each other perfectly? And yet, it's likely that I've already lost you at some point during my first 500 words. Now, is this because you don't care? Of course not. You're here spending two of the most in-demand resources you have on me and my brilliant peers, your time and attention. And my goodness, I am so grateful for that. I'd be even more grateful if I knew the ideas that we shared with you tonight would stick with you for longer than 8 hours. The speed at which we speak versus the speed at which we process provides a fertile ground for an idle mind to wander, and our brains do not like to be bored. So this incredible evolutionary wonder that is our brain will fill in the space with judgments, assumptions, shopping lists, what's for dinner, an embarrassing moment from middle school, maybe even a first kiss. For me, the last two just happen to be one and the same. When we are not actively engaging in the process of listening, our brains will lose the thread quickly, and that thread will continue to unravel until something or someone pulls us back. Often it's something compelling, sometimes it's something surprising, other times it's our name. But rarely is it, oof, I haven't been listening, let me tune back in. And even if it were, you've chosen to refocus your attention entirely too late. While we all grew up consistently instructed to pay attention, there is nothing easy about the practice, particularly today, with companies investing billions of dollars every year to compel our attention to their products, devices, and apps with their beeps, buzzes, and alerts. And those stats that I gave you earlier, 125 words per minute with retention declining by 50% after 8 hours, y'all, that information was presented in a Harvard Business Review article from 1953. And I can guarantee you the listening data is not moving up and to the right, not in the billion-dollar attention economy we currently inhabit. So, if listening is a function of attention and our attention is declining rapidly, mostly without our consent, what can we do to find a way back to understanding, connecting, and most importantly, trusting one another? Well, I've got a little secret for you, and it's as easy as breathing air. Y'all, let's take a deep breath in together and release. Attention, intention, recognition. AIR is my simple formula for engaging in the practice of listening in a way that leads to greater understanding, connection, and trust. And my goodness, who wouldn't benefit from a little more understanding, connection, and trust as they move through the world these days? Let's begin. A stands for attention. I'll say it again and again and again. Listening is a function of attention. Practicing, or more aptly performing listening by engaging in nonverbal behaviors with your conversation partner, like leaning in when someone is speaking, making eye contact, nodding in affirmation, mirroring the movements of your conversation partner, all serve to visually suggest to the other person that you're listening, while simultaneously keeping your busy brain occupied long enough to focus on what's being shared with you. It also helps to keep your phone on silent. For context, my phone has been on Do Not Disturb for the better part of a decade, much to the dismay of my friends and family. While attention is a necessary condition for listening, it's insufficient on its own. So we need to scaffold our attention with 2 additional practices to keep our focus in play. Next, I, intention. As a society, we have been socialized to respond with our own ideas and perspective after someone finishes speaking. We're preparing for what we're going to say instead of continuing to listen to what's being shared. And with it, we miss out on so much information. in the AIR formula, the I is your constant. It will never change. Your intention will stay the same whether you are talking to your kiddo, neighbor, partner, or boss, to fully understand, not just hear, what is being shared with you. Finally, R, recognition. We need to be willing to recognize the lived experience of another human as their truth and get curious about that truth, because at the end of the day, that is where their idea or perspective is rooted. We can demonstrate recognition in 3 key ways: collecting observations, summarizing and paraphrasing, and reflecting feeling. Notice I did not mention asking questions. More often than not, questions take us where we want to go, not necessarily where the speaker is trying to take us. For example, the next time someone shares with you about their weekend, instead of asking, what was the best part? Or worse, what are you doing next weekend? I want you to paraphrase what you heard, state what you observed, and offer a reflection of feeling. It'll likely sound something like this. Wow, you had an incredibly full weekend with your kids' activities and family reunion. Paraphrase. I noticed your face light up when you talked about your daughter's goal in soccer. Observation. That must have made you feel so proud. Reflection of feeling. Recognition confers dignity and respect in ways that questions simply cannot. And that person will have an incredibly different experience with you, perhaps even a transformative one, because you chose to show up in this way. With all of this, I hope it is becoming clear. Listening is no longer about the information we receive. Information is cheap these days, y'all. We can find it anywhere and everywhere, and it's not particularly good. Listening is about the attention we give, the intention we offer, and the recognition we confer to create space for understanding, connection, and trust to grow. Now here's the catch. While overlaying the AIR formula on your interactions will help, it is not enough to keep your race car brain focused. Boredom will still set in. So the second piece of the puzzle, and by all accounts and measures, the more vulnerable piece, is to simultaneously apply the idea of AIR to yourself. One last time, deep breath in and release. A, attend to yourself by collecting observations through somatic inquiry, because we don't just listen with our ears, we listen with the whole of our body. What physical sensations are you experiencing when someone else is speaking? And what are those sensations trying to communicate to you? Things like heart rate, temperature, perspiration, tension, even neutrality are all scannable while listening. Now, I know you're probably thinking, but Katie, how can I possibly attend to myself, attend to the other person, and still listen effectively? Well, it turns out our bodies want to be heard just as much as our brains. And the more quickly we can acknowledge what's happening within us, the greater our capacity becomes to effectively engage with and listen to the other person. Next, I, intention check. At what point did my intention to understand shift to formulating a response, or engaging in debate, or even entirely shutting down? Consider the cue that compelled you to stop listening. And if it wasn't the beeping or the buzzing of a device, chances are it's something you either agree with or disagree with, which these days is basically everything. So always check in to make sure your intention light for understanding is on. Finally, R, recognition of self. Different than attending behaviors, this practice poses the greatest challenge for folks because it forces us to confront 3 deeply uncomfortable questions about ourselves. What are my judgments? How do those judgments inform my assumptions? And where in my lived experience did these barriers to understanding develop? Consider what emotions are bubbling up as you are listening to another person. starting with the basics. Is this joy, anger, fear, disgust, or sadness? And what does this feeling want me to know? Look for patterns over time, because our emotional models often serve as our greatest barrier to understanding. And we must be willing to recognize hard truths about ourselves if listening requires us to also acknowledge the lived experience of somebody else as their truth. That night, in the northwest suburbs of Chicago in 1993, Diane chose attention, intention, and recognition in her interaction with me and transformed my life. With all of my years of education, training, and practice, I believe deep within my bones that listening, more than any other technological advancement or discovery, is going to be the thing that reconnects us to each other and ourselves, repairing our tattered social fabric and restoring trust in our social contract. While the AIR formula is simple, enacting it in this season of our human history is by no means easy. It is both an act of courage and one of resistance. So here is my encouragement to you. Practice living and breathing AIR every day as a way to honor your conversation partner, yourself, and maybe even Diane. Because in a world where everyone is talking, you chose to transform a life by investing the two scarcest currencies you have to give: the time and attention it takes to listen. Thank you so much.